Mr. Victor is an ASU graduate. He graduated summa cum laude, and then he graduated from the Southwestern University School of Law. He is a Desert Storm veteran from the Marine Corps and a certified specialist in criminal law. He's been a criminal defense attorney for 17 years, and he was formerly a judge pro tem. Rather an interesting story about I believe it was about a half hour that he lasted in that position. He refused to hear some drug cases and was then asked to step down from that position. So he's represented clients in more than 1,000 major felony cases, including first and second degree murder, sex cases, gun cases, major drug cases, and complex white-collar cases. Jury trial experience includes several murder trials, including death-eligible matters, as well as complex sex cases. Marc J. Victor has represented clients in many high-profile and media attention cases. Mr. Montgomery graduated near the top of his high school class and became the first graduate to attend the United States Military Academy at West Point, New York, from his high school class. His leadership style was tested on the battlefield as a tank platoon leader during Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm, where he led missions protecting U.S. operations from Iraqi forces. He was awarded a Bronze Star Medal for meritorious service for his contribution to the liberation of Kuwait, and was later promoted to the rank of captain, ultimately rising to the rank of major while serving in the Individual Ready Reserve. Following his military service and work in the private sector, Bill earned his JD from the ASU Law School as well, graduating magna cum laude and receiving the prestigious Order of the Coit. He went to work for the Maricopa County Attorney's Office, where he quickly gained a reputation as an aggressive prosecutor and tireless advocate for victims' rights, garnering tough sentences for felony drunk drivers, serious repeat felons, and gang members. He also supervised prosecutions in the Auto Theft Bureau, which recorded a 35% drop in auto theft under his leadership. Bill Montgomery was elected Maricopa County Attorney in 2010 on a pledge to fight crime, honor victims' rights, and protect and strengthen our community. Bill has helped shape legislation designed to protect victims of crime and reform a child protective services, and he continues to be a passionate advocate for victims' rights in Arizona as Maricopa County Attorney. He currently resides in Gilbert, Arizona with his wife and their children. And I believe that Mr. Victor also has children. I did not mention that, but five, wow, there we go. More than two by a lot. One thing I would point out, we've been asked not to film this debate. Mr. Montgomery is currently participating in legislation or in litigation regarding the Arizona medical marijuana issue.
So what
and
new
so
ideas is he going to bring?
how
What else
we
that can be
are
tried?
asked
And also, I'd like to know, what on earth is the definition of winning the drug war? Is it when everybody's in prison? Is it when everybody's in prison or working for the drug war? Do you know they can't even win the drug war in prison? I got people who go to prison for theft cases having nothing to do with drugs and come out addicts. It's just not going to happen. Ending the drug war will accomplish all these goals. First up, this is a freedom issue. The bottom line is this. Free people own themselves. They own their bodies, their time, their money. They get to decide how they want to live for themselves. They're in charge of themselves. Free people get to weigh risks and costs and benefits and decide for themselves whether they want to engage in conduct. They think for themselves. They're not looking for the government to take care of them from cradle to grave. They don't want Mr. Montgomery or some other politician or their neighbor or the majority to tell them how to live their lives. They don't want to be told what they can put in their own body. Of course, freedom is not without responsibilities. Free people don't need to trespass on other people to be free. I'm sure Mr. Montgomery will point out that freedom may involve some trespass on other people's rights. It doesn't. I'm not advocating that. I don't care if you're high or drunk or tired or mad. You don't get to violate another person's right. This debate is really about the role of government. Federalists say the government should be limited. Of course it should be limited. They are our agents. We don't need the government to save us from ourselves. Free people don't beg for rights. The drug war is simply incompatible with a free society. Besides, it doesn't work. You know who it helps? It does help some people. It does accomplish some things. It helps drug dealers in gangs, in cartels. And it helps drug cops. If you're a drug cop, you love the drug war. If you're a drug prosecutor, if you're a criminal defense attorney, I plead guilty. I make a lot of money off the drug war. If you support prisons, if your job is part of the prison complex, you love the drug war. But the drug war has been a complete disaster by any measure. It's wasting money for over 40 years. We have 4% of the world's population and yet 25% of the world's prison population. 2.3 million people in prison now. Enough is enough. Today, do fewer people use drugs? No. More people use drugs today than before the drug war. There was a recent study. They asked school kids, how hard is it to get marijuana? You know what they said? Easier to get marijuana than either alcohol or cigarettes. What would you expect? They're easy to get even in prison. We shouldn't be surprised, right? I mean, the drug war encourages violence. It creates a black market. How are they going to solve disputes other than with guns? But we know this already. We already had the alcohol war. Remember the alcohol war? You don't. If you're on the other side of this debate, you don't. The alcohol war went from 1919 to 1933. A complete disaster. Unless you were in organized crime, it was fabulous for you. The best thing that ever happened to you was the prohibition on alcohol. Violence increased, alcoholism increased. Law enforcement running around, chasing people drinking beer. Of course, alcohol is still a problem, but it's easy to get rehab. If you fall off the bandwagon, no problem, you're not going to prison. Have we seen the Miller guy and the Budweiser guy fighting each other when they bring their drugs to the corner? Are they having turf wars? No. If they get into a dispute, do they fight with violence in the streets? No. They go to court. There's nobody offering large cash bonuses to transport alcohol across the country. Stats are that fewer people would use alcohol or in marijuana if it was legal. Before I close, and I'm running out of time, 10 minutes goes by fast, I would like to know something from Mr. Montgomery. Mr. Montgomery, given that you have discretion to allocate prosecutorial resources, and given that there are still lots of violent bad guys running around the streets, don't you think the citizens of Maricopa County would be much safer if you took resources that you are currently using to chase around pot smokers and devote them to getting murderers and rapists and real bad guys instead? I want to know whenever are we going to achieve the goals of the drug war? When are we going to stop drugs with the drug war? Is the answer never? We both know it is. And finally, isn't $69 billion better spent on almost anything, including it back to the free people who earned it? Maybe on rehab or prevention or schools or anything other than throwing it down the rat hole of the failed drug war. Thank you.
I promise not to have anyone who cheered forced to take your analysis.
Somehow that's not funny.
At the outset, let me just say that the debate here is independent of the current suit pending before the U.S. District Court of Arizona regarding the Arizona Medical Marijuana Act. And my position and basis for joining that suit is a consequence of my position as a Maricopa County attorney in the carrying out of my duties and responsibilities consistent with my oath. Now, with respect to our debate here today, let me start off by saying that I'd like to address this from two different perspectives. One, of course, is the political perspective, or the philosophy of libertarianism, which Mr. Victor expressed very eloquently over the course of his remarks, and the libertarian approach to the use of the force of government in addressing this particular issue. And at the outset of that, it should become clear that I am not libertarian. I'm conservative. Consistent with Ronald Reagan's dictate, I believe that we should maximize individual liberty within an orderly society. And that is the beginning of the point of divergence for our addressing this particular issue. You know, the libertarian position on this requires a construct about the nature of man and community much like communism does, and it requires a utopian view of how people interact with one another in a community. And it requires you to come to the conclusion that the consequences of individual destructive behavior is limited to the individual. That the addict doesn't wind up on a street corner where we, either through government action or community action, don't wind up being responsible to feed, care, and house that addict. And as far as that point goes, I believe that Mr. Victor and I would agree. I don't think that that's necessarily a governmental duty, but it winds up becoming a community responsibility that we all then share a piece of. Another important thing to point out, too, is that Mr. Victor is confusing freedom with license. Freedom in our society is not the freedom to do anything you want. That would be license. And the founders of this country knew very well that that was not what they were putting together. In fact, John Adams, the first member and only member of the Federalist Party elected president, said it very well that our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other.